our last episode, we discussed microaggressions and the impact on mental health and well being. Counselor Roni White is back to continue the conversation and help us understand how to avoid committing microaggressions and how to interrupt them if we see them happening. That's next on Wellbeing Matters. Thank you for tuning in to Wellbeing Matters. Today we have Counselor Roni White, a licensed and nationally certified therapist who supports individuals coping with microaggressions and other life stressors. Roni, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Roni, in case anyone missed our last episode, would you briefly explain microaggressions?
Microaggressions is a term we're all getting used to, and it breaks down into three categories: microassaults, micro-insults, and micro-invalidations. All can be experienced verbally, non-verbally, behaviorally, or environmentally. And these are usually coincide with our lived marginalized identities.
So, how do people avoid committing microaggressions?
A lot of people that do commit them, it's coming from an unconscious state. Sometimes, yes, it is conscious and blatant, but other times it's unconscious and it's coming from biases. So first and foremost, it's understanding what biases you have. And that can seem complicated because a lot of people walk around thinking, I don't have a bias. And so it's understanding the biases that you hold. Basically, these assumptions that you hold about other people or other ways of life, and starting to understand that and where do they even come from. Starting to be more responsible for the language that you give, and understanding and being more aware of your environment, knowing how someone is perceiving you, how someone is receiving you. So when you are speaking and you notice someone might feel taken aback or the reaction might not fit what you've intended, check in and understand, like, maybe your language and your languaging has committed a microaggression, and being more open to understanding how it affected and impacted that person versus defensive and just being ready to minimize the aggression that has transpired.
Really helpful. And so if someone is to observe a microaggression occurring, how does that person interrupt it?
Yeah, that's almost like, right, when we're talking about being a bystander or being able to engage and assist in a situation for a more positive outcome. And I would just say, one, the bystander needs to understand, again, the environment in which they're in, the people that are involved in the situation, as there could be students, parents, administrators, staff, and any combination, involved in this scenario. And so being able to know if it's time to insert yourself or to deal with it in the aftermath. So that can look like using healthy humor to de-escalate, not to avoid or not to minimize, but to just de-escalate everyone's tensions if the circumstance has escalated. Two, understand what language needs to be used if you can interject right then and there and correct language. Three, understand if it's something that needs to be handled afterwards, and pulling the person that received the microaggression aside and showing that you acknowledge what has happened, as well as going to the person that has given the microaggression and talking to them about it and maybe shedding some more light on what has occurred. So as a bystander, just understanding the environment and what would be the best course of action, because it's not going to be the same all the time.
I think that's important to remember. Thank you, Roni.
You're welcome.
So what are resources or supports available to people who are coping with microaggressions, or maybe people who just want to learn more?
Yeah. So in addition to the resources that we talked about in the last episode, also checking in with a healthy support system, right? And so when I say a healthy support system, people that are going to really openly listen and be able to give unbiased feedback to you. There are professional writings that occur around microaggressions, checking in with various groups, family support that can be available to you, listening more and talking less, right? Like to be able to just be an observer of what's happening and how people are. There are books, there are articles written on it, and joining in a conversation around it.
Roni, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and for all the support that you have provided to MCPS staff and their family members.
Thank you. Thank you for even discussing this topic that is incredibly important, and it really does affect people's daily lives.
So thank you for tuning in to part 2 of our conversation on microaggressions. If you missed episode 1, you can find it in the link in the YouTube description. MCPS staff, please remember, both the Equity Unit and the Employee Assistance Program is here to support you confidentially and provide options. Thank you again for watching Wellbeing Matters, and be well, everyone.